Hello, everybody. My name is Jake from Umbrella IT Services, and today we're going to be speaking with Paul Sweeney about enterprise resource planning software. So, Paul helps businesses identify problems, inefficiencies, different mundane tasks that can be automated, and a ton of other stuff using ERP software. Paul broke down what ERP software is, what your business can get out of it, when your business should be looking into it, and a ton of other information for us during today's interview. So I hope you find it valuable. Without any further ado, let's jump into it. I'd like to give Paul Sweeney a big thank you for coming on today and talking with us about ERP software and how it can help small, medium businesses remove friction, preventing growth, and a number of other topics. Paul, thank you very much for coming on today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into enterprise resource planning software?
Sure. Thanks, Jake. So I've spent the last 20 years helping small and medium businesses implement enterprise resource planning or ERP software. But I got into the business after a previous company I was with bought some software to better manage inventory. During the process of implementing that software, I ended up teaching the consultant things. So once that project was done, the consultant said, "Oh, hey, do you want to come work with us?" So I looked at it, and that opportunity looked better, so I took the offer, and I've been working in the space ever since. Right, so my focus is once we get that system implemented, I turn my attention to helping customers get the most value from the software. That's why I call myself an ERP Sherpa. I mean, you can do it yourself, but because I've been there before, I can help you get the results you want with less work and quicker.
That makes sense. And when people are calling you in to do the enterprise resource planning software, what are some of the main reasons why a company would need something like this?
So some of the things that they are buying are flexibility, standardization, access to information, a single point of entry, because what I find is smaller companies, when you start up, you don't necessarily have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of needs, right? You just need to get it done, and so you bring it. You start with, say, a QuickBooks, and that does. You get your bills out to your customers, you get their checks in, you pay your bills. It all works, right? Then maybe you add inventory, and then maybe you start doing projects and payroll, and you've got all these disparate pieces out there, but they're not really connected together. And so, like, for example, in a project-focused business, you can't pull all that data together easily to say, am I making money on this project? Or where did that go sideways? Right? And then, even though with whatever they have right now, they might be able to pull those reports, but it's slow and cumbersome to get access to that data, right? Because these systems are not designed around multi-users, we can't give project managers that data. So when you pull in an ERP, it's designed around multiple people, access to some people have access to some things, other people have access to different things, but not everybody sees everything, right? So that means I can give, say, a project manager access to their projects, so they know currently where they're at, budget to actual. Is my project going sideways? Do I need to look at something? That's the type of value that ERP brings to the table.
That makes a lot of sense. I know that a lot of our larger clients, once they start to hit the 50 user mark, maybe about 50 employees, they start to notice that things are starting to kind of get a little spread out, and that communication within the business does start to break down. And I was actually just reading this morning, just doing a little bit of prep work before this, that about 60% on average of an employee's time now, prior to COVID, could be wasted per year. I think it was the average office worker, 60% of their time is not used efficiently. So it's very important, I think, for people to understand that when they do start to feel this disassociation of the different departments of their business, it's really important to make sure that they're leveraging technology to be able to solve that problem for them. What's an example of a client that you worked with where it kind of went from night to day, just with the difference in terms of productivity or internal communications? What's one of your favorite experiences?
Well, I can give you a couple of examples. So speaking to your 60% piece, I had one customer that their accounts payable person was spending 3 to 4 days every month doing data entry. Right, and I just happened to be in the office, and she mentioned this task she was doing, and this. So I looked at it and I was, well, what? Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
So what I did was I think we charged them $1,500, and I turned that 4-day job into a 5-minute job.
That's awesome.
Right. Like, what's the benefit to the business? I mean, the job still gets done, but if you think about it from the employee's perspective, how much more fun is their job now? And what things that are far more valuable can they now use those 3 or 4 days for?
100%. So what does that look like when you sit down with her and she explains to you, I'm doing data entry? What kind of data entry was she doing? And then how were you able to turn that into an automated process?
Well, in this particular case, it's a really, really odd thing, because the vendor that they work with provides them a list of the invoices that they need to pay on a portal, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
And so she manually scrapes those off that portal, matches them up with their own purchase orders. This is all done in Excel, and then out of that Excel sheet, she loads them into their accounts payable. Right, and all I really did was take that Excel sheet and use a macro to auto write into the ERP. It's real simple, right?
Yeah.
It's just I see a problem, I can see how to leverage the existing tools to make life easier.
That's awesome. And I know that when you're doing that across an entire organization, I've done similar things using G Suite and Office 365, where when people get onboarded, they get added to a group, and then that group automatically inherits all of the permissions and resources and workflows that person needs to take care of. So instead of spending 4.5 hours onboarding the staff member and going, do they have this calendar? Do they have this file? Do they have access to this contact directory? Do they know what email they have? Do they know what responsibilities they have? They just get an email that directs them to a site that explains to them, hey, you got these resources, you got these workflows, you have these processes, and you're responsible for these tasks. And then they have somebody shadow them for the first week, and then they're good. It just simplifies things so much. It removes the chance for human error. And like you said, it just makes things more fun for people because they're able to do higher level jobs instead of just sitting there copy pasting for 4 days out of the month, which is just crazy. So very, very good to know.
Right. And I know she likes it because every time something goes wrong with it, my phone rings.
That's great. So what kind of strategies and guidelines do you usually implement alongside an ERP software? So like for myself, I always like to break down workflows and procedures and responsibilities alongside the automations. What kind of stuff do you bring in when you're setting this stuff up for folks?
Well, so one of the most important things that I like to focus on is standardization. Right. So when you first start your business, you'll agree to anything the customer wants because you want the business.
Yeah.
However, once your business has grown and the transaction volume has grown, you discover that this approach can create massive friction. So one of the first things I try to teach is the understanding of the repercussions to the business of shooting from the hip like that. Right. So if you have a standard for how products are sold, projects or services are billed, and the process becomes quick and easy, and you can train new staff on how to do it. Right? But if each customer is billed in different ways with different rules, then your back office becomes very manual, slows your billing, that has an impact on cash flow, and suddenly your monthly billing takes 3 weeks instead of 2 days. Right? So when we standardize how your business is done, you will find your business can grow more quickly, you will have fewer issues to resolve, and it's easy to train people how to do their job, and it creates fewer errors. Right, so that's one of the things I like to focus on.
That makes a lot of sense because when I was starting off, people are always kind of confused because the number one thing that I've always hated Everybody knows this about me. I hate accounting. I always tell my accountant, I don't understand. I don't know what any of this is. I just want you to keep me out of a cage. Like I just don't want to go to prison for tax fraud. I just don't understand anything else. So I love the financial side and I love economics. I just hate the bean counting and do I have this receipt and do I have that and blah, blah, blah. So right from the very get-go, I made sure that I was automating everything to do with my finances. So if I made a purchase, it got populated into a spreadsheet, and then that spreadsheet got put into an app, and I'd be able to look at everything. And then I implemented QuickBooks later on, and it's always been so simple for me because everything is automated in that regards to the business. And now I'm starting to understand, okay, not only do I have this accounting stuff that needs to get done, now I have an operational back end. Now I have an HR back end. Now I have a systems and support back end. And trying to standardize these things is something that I'm trying to get done over the span of a year, and it's just about there. Have you noticed that with your clients, it takes about the same amount of time, takes a year to get everything standardized, or are you able to get that done in a quicker way?
Well, what I find is that the process of getting them up and running and comfortable takes about a year. Right, and part of it is the changeover, right? It takes time to change.
Yeah.
But part of it is getting them to change their processes. Part of it is getting them to embrace the change, and then the other part of it, which is I think is far more important, is getting them to wrap their head around what this thing actually does. Right, and then after that year, they tend to go, "Oh, I get it."
Yeah.
Wow.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right, and then we can start doing some really good things.
Yeah.
Right, because all up to this time, really, what I've done is I've taken what you have and I've kind of morphed it over into a new system. I haven't found that it's a successful strategy to do more than that in the initial go round, because what happens is you get way too much pushback because people really don't have their head wrapped around what this thing does. Right, so if I just get them up and running and just address the upfront pain points that we've identified, i.e. the low-hanging fruit, then they get their head wrapped around it, and then now we can start to say, okay, well, now that you've got this going, you've got those benefits that we talked about, how are we going to leverage it and get even more benefits out of it? Right, so one of the things I like to look at is let's partner. Right, I'm not a vendor, I'm part of your team.
Yeah.
Which means that for you, in your best interest, it's best if we stay engaged. I get regular visibility into what you're doing, what you're trying to do, how your business is running. Because, so for example, I'm walking around your office and I see somebody banging away at something, and I'm, whoa, stop. We don't need to do it this way.
Yeah.
I can improve your productivity. But I can only do that if I'm engaged, right? Or in another case I've had where a customer was spending a whole day preparing a monthly report. And the only reason I heard about this is because he wanted to add a piece of data to the report that wasn't in the source data he was using. So when he showed me what he was trying to do, I said, whoa, let's not keep going this way.
Yeah.
So I redid his report. So now he gets the same results by right-click in Excel and refresh.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the way it should be, to be honest with you. I see so much waste going on, and so many poorly implemented technical strategies nowadays. It is quite frustrating to see a lot of these vendors kind of do this to themselves as well. When people are finally free of these shackles of doing these menial labor tasks, what do you usually recommend they start doing instead? Is it analysis? Is it strategizing? Is it a completely new role within the business? What's your experience there?
Well, so that's a real challenging one, because that delves into multiple questions.
Mm-hmm.
And one analogy I like is from the book called Entrepreneurial Operating System. I don't know if you've read that one.
I have not.
But it talks about seats on the bus, right? So within any given business, there's a number of different seats that need to be filled for the business to run. And when you first start out, there's one set of seats, but then you've grown to another point where the seats might change, or maybe the people in the seats need to change, right? So sometimes we get into a point where the business has grown to a point where the existing people that were comfortable doing those day-to-day tasks are not necessarily the best choice to migrate to the next level with the business.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of small businesses have trouble with that transition because they're saying, well, I like this person. They've helped me, and I want to be loyal.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a challenge, and I respect the loyalty, and it's a great thing, but it can be hard for them to understand that it's just like they ever play team sports, and somebody's just sucks, right? And you're just trying to work around them. How does a team feel about having this person on the team?
Yeah.
Right. Then you say, okay, well, look, this individual is a great person, but their role in the team is affecting the entire team. So maybe we need to separate and bring somebody else in. And that has a huge impact on the team. Right, so sometimes we can refocus somebody's task on something else. A lot of times we can take a whole bunch of different types of tasks and consolidate them in this one person, so everybody else can go do the stuff that they're more interested in. Like if we look at inventory, somebody has been spending a lot of time doing menial tasks to keep track of their inventory. Well, we can consolidate those tasks and several others into this one person. And so the inventory person can then go focus on making sure they have the right stuff in inventory. Right, so that's the kind of things I'm thinking that where businesses can consolidate some tasks into one person and then let others do the stuff that they really want to do, which is the higher value things.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I have a lot of folks, like my personal approach with the loyalty thing that you mentioned is trying to train staff up as much as possible. Like we want to make sure they have all the resources that they need and go to improve and stuff like that. But then some folks, they're just not interested in improving. They're happy where they're at. And it makes a lot of sense for a lot of folks. And in my experience, it is fairly amicable when that happens and the business does expand beyond that. But what I always think about whenever I do have to make a tough decision like that is, am I going to go to the rest of the team and say, I know you got to feed the family, I know you got to pay your bills, but I don't want to make Steven upset, so we got to keep him on. We're gonna keep the anchor on the ship because I don't want to make Steven upset. Like that's not a way to run your business. You know what I mean? There's definitely a way to honorably and to respectfully run your business, but to understand that someone is not the ideal fit for your business and then to keep them in a role is, in my opinion, abusive to both parties. Because that person is going to know what's going on. They're going to understand that there's some sort of odd friction in the air, and they're not going to understand why. So it's very important, I think, to make sure you have that amicable discussion. But mostly in my experience, and I'm going to learn from you in a second here, whenever I do end up automating things, not to your extent, but when I end up automating and improving the business, most people don't get replaced. They're freed up. Like in my experience, they end up doing analytics, and then they end up being more of a leader in the business. Is that your experience the majority of the time?
Oh, yes. Right. There's a lot of people that they just go, oh, yes, I don't have to do that anymore.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, you saved me my Friday afternoons. I'm not doing data entry anymore. That's usually the response I get is, oh, now I have an extra 4 hours every Friday because I'm not having to do this task or I'm not having to do that task. So now I've got an extra 16 hours a month that I can do whatever I want with. And then we're able to use those other technologies and kind of give them those tools, and they go, whoa, this is included and I can do this now, and holy, and then all of a sudden you touch base 6 months later and it's an entirely new position and this person is just flourishing.
That's right. And they like it better.
Yeah.
Right. Because they've just gone, oh, I got to do this. This is killing me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But and I would say that the one trait that I see very commonly, and it's at many, many different levels, is just a lack of curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That nobody says, wait a minute, there's got to be another way to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And even if the answer is no, but at least you ask the question.
Yeah.
Right? And this comes back to my point earlier, where if I'm a partner in your business, when something like that comes up, we can talk and say, hey, is there a different way we can do this? And we can look at it and say yes or no. And if it's yes, does our existing tools do it? And then I just need some training? Or do we need to, as the Excel macro, do we need to build something that will help it? And then we, of course, always look at, okay, if we have to build something, is there a return on this investment? Does it make sense?
Mm.
Right? Because, spending $1,000 to fix a $100 problem doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
Right? But say spending $100 to solve a $1,000 problem makes a huge amount of sense. Right? So that's how I look at it. And that's why I like to partner with people so we can have those conversations. We can connect with the roles people are doing and get an understanding of what they're doing, how they're doing, and they can ask questions. Or I can ask questions. Well, why are you doing that? And that way, then over time, we leverage what this tool can do.
Yeah. And what would be some of those features? Like, what are the staples of good ERP software?
So some of those features are, the primary one is a single point of entry for everything. Right. So if you're a project-focused business and you're billing, so let's take an engineering firm. You've got a whole bunch of people using their time against the project. Well, they've got usually they have a timesheet. Well, that timesheet drives what the customer gets billed, but it also drives payroll. Right. So one point of entry, driven two different transactions.
Mm.
Right. And so with an integrated system, when that employee adds an entry to their timesheet, hits save. Now that project manager can see, oh, my budget actual has changed. So they can monitor in real time what people are doing, where their projects are at. Did we misestimate our budget, and do I need to go get a change order? Right. So you then allows you to be proactive rather than reactive. When that bill comes out for approval every month, and you look at it, oh, we're over budget. The customer's not going to pay this bill, and now you're playing whack-a-mole.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Whereas with an ERP, that's a single source of entry, it's live data. You have live access to these things, and you can proactively manage instead of reactively manage.
Yeah. And what other kind of data does it present?
Almost anything, right? I mean, some of the other things that we can do is like if one customer, and I really don't like to do this, but you can, is a customer wants a specific invoice format. Well, we can do that, and we just build it into the system, and out it comes, right? We have different payment terms for our customers, right? The other one that I see is deposits or prepayments on orders or projects, and how people process those. Make it very difficult to track, who's paid what and how much of the project's been paid.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas an ERP system is designed around to be able to do that. So, for example, like in your business, you sell a $5,000 printer and you want 50% paid up front and 50% after the product's been delivered. Well, you create the order and you take a payment against the order for that 50%. And then when that's fully processed and becomes an invoice, the invoice is for the total amount. It shows the amount that was paid already, and then the net due.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it all follows in under the customer record. So I can now, at any time, I can go into the customer record and say, okay, well, they gave me a payment of $2,500. Oh, it was for this order that's still outstanding. We haven't delivered the product. And from one point, I can flow through and look at all of the different pieces of that transaction and that customer record.
Mm.
Right? I don't need to go searching in paper. I don't need to ask questions to anybody. I have immediate access to it.
What other information would be included on the customer page?
Pretty well anything you want in terms of, like, there's the standard Tombstone data, their name, their address, contacts, telephone numbers. You can look at all their past orders, past payments, their outstanding balance. And that's just a quick summary. And then if you want to collect additional information, we start getting into that zone between really the financial aspect of the customer and then the CRM part of the customer.
Mm.
Right? That's I don't know what to call it, like what's the best term for it, but there's a spectrum
Mm-hmm.
from one to the other, and depends on the nature of your business. Do you need to get more involved in the CRM, or does just the financial side of the customer need to be considered?
Yeah, and are you able to track things inside of the ERP? Like, I spent 12 hours on this customer this week. Here's the breakdown of what those 12 hours look like. These are the things I did for that customer. And then I'm able to analyze all of those on a macro level and see what can be automated.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you can, look at it in your business, we can integrate your ticketing system into the invoicing. Right. So all the ticket details show up on the invoice. Mm-hmm. And then you can link the two. Right. You can see, what tickets have been invoiced, what haven't been invoiced, and you start to have some visibility into what you're charging the customer versus the cost of servicing the customer.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so we can bring those things together, and that's really where the power of these things comes into play, right? Because if you don't need to know the cost versus what you're billing, then there's no value to these systems. But I generally find that it's a competitive world. So the more you know about your revenue versus your costs, the better you are able to put together a competitive value proposition for the customer.
100%. I think that any business that doesn't understand its true labor cost and the cost of the services that they're providing is doomed. Like the way that I've managed to go from a bedroom closet fixing phone screens to having a team of people in an office downtown and dozens of full-time clients and 1,000 residential clients, etc., is through cost. Like, I just understand what am I doing right now, and I did have to sacrifice a lot of my time when I was starting off because it was just me, and I'm charging $20 an hour instead of what we charge now, and things were very, very different, but I still understood a tank of gas is this much money. My time is this much money. It costs me this much to buy this tool set, to buy this thing, to rent this space, to have these people on, And if you don't understand those things, I think that your business is in a lot of trouble, and you need to understand these things, not only to grow, but to stay alive.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's fundamental. So that's one of the reasons why I was so interested to speak with you today, is because this tool, a lot of these different tools that are out there, is such a concise way to create different metrics for your business, which allows you to create different goals for your business, which allows you to have your business succeed. Because as I've heard before, an idiot with a plan will beat a genius without one. And I think it's so important for every business owner to understand what it is that they're doing, why they're doing it, and how it's getting done. Like you said, so their staff can be happier, they can achieve higher levels of success, they can be more competitive, they can expand their impact in their communities. There's so many different reasons to be looking at software like this. And I wish that it was more well known to a lot of folks. What software platform specifically do you usually recommend to people when they're starting to look at ERP software?
Well, I'm a little biased on that because there's tons of them out there, right? So there's the way I like to describe it is buying ERP software is kind of like buying a vehicle. You go down the auto mall and you can drive yourself crazy looking at options, right? Because there are so many of them out there, right? So part of it is the approach that I prefer to take is, rather than talk about a particular vendor or product, is let's look at what problems we're trying to solve, right? Let's understand really what problems we're trying to solve. What does your ideal scenario look like 1 year from now and 5 years from now? Right, and then that will help us look at what our options are. Right, and then there's the general tool versus an industry specific. There's tons of industry specific software out there, and what I've found is, when I looked at what they do, that for most businesses, a general ERP software can give you the same results, but then you also have a larger pool of people to pull from that might even know what your software is. Whereas if you go with an industry specific one, now you have to train everybody that comes in the door how to use it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense as well. We started implementing different sales software and different CRMs and this kind of stuff. I've been experimenting, and surprisingly, the most general one seems to be the best fit for us. There's so many people, like I'm sure you know, in the IT space, where it's, oh, you got to buy this is the one to buy, but it's integrated, it's designed specifically for your industry, and they're just missing so many features. And looking at the different forums and the support and all the features that people are adding in and all this kind of stuff, we're just going to go with this incredibly general basic CRM. And we actually had a guest on talking about this earlier this week. I'm excited to publish our interview with him, and he was saying, like, keep it simple. You know, it's better to go with a general tool. You know, there's millions of people using this. People are people. They're going to figure out stuff inside of this system that the developers didn't even know that they had available. So it's interesting to hear you say that. What are some of the general resources and platforms that you would recommend to people? Is Flexxus able to kind of help people develop their own unique software with their own sort of branding on top of one of these general tools, or do you recommend specific platforms?
Well, actually, before we go into that, I wanted to come back to the previous topic to raise one item of industry specific versus general. Let's say you go down the road and you buy an industry specific piece of software, and 2 years from now, 3 years from now, maybe you acquire a different business, or you see an opportunity in a slightly different field. Well, now your industry specific software may or may not be able to support you. Whereas a general tool will support you no matter how you pivot your business.
That's very true.
Right. So that's the piece that I wanted to raise.
Yeah. The tool that I've been using actually is one where when my staff first see it, they kind of laugh because it's just so simple. Like it's for computer repair and for iPhone repair. Like it's not a management system for an enterprise. But the reason I went with it is because it's so flexible. Like everyone's been like, what is this? It doesn't. Nah, this is cute. This is hilarious. When are you gonna get big boy software? I'm like, go spend half an hour in there. Go spend half an hour in the code and go spend half an hour messing around with these different functions and this kind of stuff. And they're like, I created the perfect solution for something that I did it in half an hour. What is this? Like, it's so amazing having something that's just simple and flexible. Like, I was looking at another vendor, I won't name names, but they were like, yeah, it takes about 12 hours of training to be able to use the ticketing system. I'm like, excuse me? They're like, yeah, like 8 to 12 hours. It's fine. We'll onboard you. You got to do all these courses. We have a whole college set up. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, I have 5 employees. I don't have the time to dedicate 12 hours to doing this. That's absurd. And then I was like, I'm just going to stick with what I have. And then I looked at their feature set, and again, like 60% of it was bloat, and I didn't need it. But there's 1 or 2 things where I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting, and okay, maybe we should have a customer thermometer kind of situation going on where we can get reviews about the service, and we should change the title here and whatever. And I just implemented those systems into our general software, and I was like, this is done, easy. And now my staff can go, okay, so the plus button means make a new ticket, and the thing that says notes is where I leave my notes, and all this information here is for this, and all the information there is for that. And it's just so easy to use it. And again, like this industry specific software, like I plan on expanding much further from just doing managed services. And this software I have now, I'm assuming, will grow with me because I've done a little bit of testing with it. But this other software from this other vendor, there's a lot of walled gardens, and there's a lot of speed bumps in my way if I wanted to expand into doing something else. So I'm glad you brought that up, Paul.
Yeah. Right. So in terms of platforms, and you know, like you talked about branding it as your own. I guess my first thought is try to understand why you want to do that. Right? Because the way I look at these things is they're a tool, very similar to a truck.
Yeah.
Right, you get in, you drive it. Do you care what the name on the back of it is? Most times, no.
No.
So I just care. Does it do the job I need it to do? Right, and then what's the total cost of ownership?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The main reason I would ask is just some people, you know, they like to have, when they log into their portal, it says their company name, you know, and they want to say, okay, we're going to go to this tool, but can we see the company name? Is the logo in the bottom right corner of the taskbar, is it the company branding, or is it the other tool?
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
And so when I first got into this space, I was working with
excuse me,
Sage 300, which is the old Acumatica product, and it's a very powerful tool, very good at what it does. And we can add your logo onto reports, but in terms of the user interface, we have very limited abilities to make it your own.
Yeah.
More recently, I've got involved with another product called Acumatica. That one is a more modern architecture, and we have much more power around it. So, you know, we can make the color scheme match your company's color scheme. Your logo is on the login page, right? And of course, it's always on the invoices and documents you send out to customers. But the user interface is much more adaptable to make it look like yours. Right. So it depends on where we're talking about. But yeah, we can definitely personalize it and make it look like yours.
That's good to know. And can startups benefit from this kind of stuff? Like what tipping point do you think people usually have? Like for my business, for example, usually when you hit about 10 staff, then you need our services. And when you hit 5 staff, it becomes convenient to have our services, but it is more of a luxury. Like it's something where you would call us in part-time. Is it similar for yourself, or is it 25 staff, or is it 50 staff, or how do you recommend people kind of start thinking about ERP software? Is it size or is it revenue?
A little bit of both, because you can have a lower revenue business that has high margins. They can afford the product sooner than a low margin business, right? But having said that, the way I prefer to look at it is the cost of the tool versus the benefits you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there needs to be a certain size before the benefits outweigh the cost. Right? So now if you're in a startup and you know you're going to grow fast, then maybe it's worthwhile putting it in early.
Yeah.
But most of the time, startups have scarce dollars.
Yes.
Right? So let's focus on using those dollars where they're going to provide the greatest benefit. And initially, most of the time, ERP is not the place. Right? And it might be building up your inventory. It might be on spending your money on sales to have more customers. Right? And then after the fact, then you can spend. Then you've built sales and you've got this inventory coming and going, and now you start to see the frictional problems because you don't have a handle on how much is in inventory or when it's arriving, what my cost was. I don't know if I made any money. Right now we can come into play and bring the ERP in, and then you start to identify, and now you manage these things that affect profitability.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas initially, profitability is not going to happen because you have no revenue or no products and managing the inventory. Right? So your problems are different.
I think also a big benefit that I've noticed is the customers always seem to have something to say once we're finished implementing things. Like they always say, seem a little bit less stressed out, or this just went so smoothly. And one thing that I've always, to touch on your point about standardization, one thing that I've always tried to focus on, I read a book called The E-Myth, and that was one of the very first books I ever read about business. And it says that your customers need to have the exact same experience every time they deal with you. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I've always tried to implement, even though it's very difficult in IT because, there's so many variables in it. But when you walk into Starbucks, it doesn't matter if you're in Starbucks in Seattle, if you're in Starbucks in New York, if you're in Starbucks in Dubai, if you're in Starbucks in Canada. When you walk in, you go to the lineup, you have the little display cable thing, the display case, you have the drinks on your right-hand side, you have the barista saying, how can I help you? And you got the board behind you. It's the same experience every time. Home Depot, Starbucks, McDonald's, all these businesses. And something that I've always tried to do is make sure that it's a very similar experience when dealing with us. You click the button, you file the ticket, someone reaches out saying something similar, we help you out, we send in a little survey, and then you're on your way. Or we don't even send in a survey depending on the severity of the issue. But I noticed that the ERP stuff kind of does that everywhere. And once it's completed, again, you kind of have an entirely new business, and that can be pretty alarming for a lot of business owners. What are some of the types of pushback or concerns that you might experience when you're trying to implement such a comprehensive solution for them? Because I know for myself, when I started looking at this, the biggest challenge for me was actually allowing myself to step back and go, there's a lot of areas I can improve in. When you realize 75-80% of what you built needs to be replaced, it's deadwood. Do you get pushback like that from folks, or are they mostly excited about it, or do you ever get that little bit of a fear response from people?
Oh, I get the fear all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most challenging parts of this whole space is that there's all sorts of different fears. There's, I'm afraid for my job, or the one that never gets actually expressed is, I'm afraid they're going to find me out.
Yeah,
they have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah,
right. And so those ones tend to be the ones that are hardest to overcome, right? Because they're so fearful of being caught out for not knowing anything, right? I've had a case where the person ended up being let go because they were pushing back so hard that they were the problem and they had to be let go.
Yeah.
Right. But having said that, after they were let go, the whole business, you could feel it lighten up and everyone, right? It just became so much better.
Yeah.
right? It's unfortunate, but that can happen. All right. The other one is the fear of the unknown. Oh, I don't know if this is going to work. And then, of course, you're asking people to change. Nobody likes to change.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I remember in my university days, I'd come into a classroom and people like to sit in the same chair every week. So once in a while, I just go sit in their chair.
Yeah. Oh, really?
See, I watch them walk through the door, and they're just like,
yeah,
I don't know what to do.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
Right? So there's that fear of change.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, one of the pieces of advice I'd have for businesses is to teach people not to be afraid of change. And to do that, you almost need to create a constant change in your business so that people become used to the idea that things are going to change.
Yeah. And I think that's really important for startup owners to understand, and people that are kind of getting ready for this kind of solution, because I've kind of instilled all of those values that you're talking about in my team, and it seems to be working quite well. How do you recommend people do that? How do people instill this kind of progression and this regular change in their business in a way where it's not just change for the sake of change, but it's actually productive?
I would say that one of the most critical things is leadership needs to lead the changes and demonstrate they're using the changes. And then part of the challenge of that, of course, is that the leadership doesn't always know that changes are needed. Right. So I come back to a principle out of one of Tom Peters' early books. I think it was Tom Peters. I forgot his name. It's called In Search of Excellence. Right. One of the principles in there is management by wandering around. Right, which means you got to get out, walk around, walk your business.
Yeah.
Right. Stand and work with the staff and see what they're doing. Right, because then, you know what your staff is doing. You can see where, oh, this is a problem, or oh, we could make this person's life so much nicer. Right. And you get that visibility into your business. Now you've got many opportunities to implement change, right? And the smaller the changes, the easier they are to accept. But also, that's part of teaching people that we are going to be changing.
Yeah.
Right. And then once you've taught people that you the leadership are open to change and you want to change, now you can start having regular meetings with people and ask them, what should we change? Right? They will give you ideas. They'll tell you what needs to be changed, but they need to know that it's safe to say, oh, this is not working.
Yeah.
Right? And until they see that safety, they can be very reluctant to say something.
I agree. I think that's very important. People need to think that it's a safe environment for them to be able to contribute. I usually end up having weekly meetings, or my management team has weekly meetings with our staff to make sure that they have that input. Like, hey, I wasted 4 hours this week doing this thing. Why is this a thing? Can we automate this? I keep getting this issue coming up on this site. Let's automate it. And then it's amazing. Like with certain sites now, when we first took them over, they were having, I don't know, 20, 30 tickets a week because they were so poorly managed before. And then now we get one ticket a month, and we're running something like 8,000 or 6,000 automations across 100 machines. And it's fantastic being able to just go, okay, your OneDrive's not working. Let's just have a script come up every time your OneDrive crashes. It'll reboot the service. You know what I mean? Little tiny things like that. Just the snowflakes make the avalanche. So yeah, I think that's really important. During this whole, you mentioned walking around the business. So during this whole epidemic / zombie apocalypse / pandemic situation, how do you recommend? Do you recommend people kind of start implementing this stuff during this time? In my experience, now is the perfect time to be restructuring their businesses and to be reorganizing. because again, people are working remotely. It is a time of change. You're starting to realize where the efficiencies and inefficiencies were, and now is the perfect time to implement stuff like this. Do you agree with that, or what's been your experience?
Oh yeah. So to me, my experience has been the more you can leverage
Yeah.
a force to change to make a bunch of other changes at the same time, the easier it is to accept it, because you can kind of go, well, we have to,
Yeah.
right? Right. But I've also done the other thing is that the leadership is okay. We're going to put in this new ERP system, and now, oh, well, that's our business. Our processes. We need to do this, this, and this. Well, now I say, well, the software doesn't do that, so we're going to change the process. Right. I blame the software for changing a process that really should be changed anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, right? That makes sense.
And just to that point, one of the most important things to me when I talk to a potential customer about ERP is I want to know if there's any process that your business does that's core to your value add or what makes you unique. Because I need to protect that.
Yeah.
Right? Once we have this software running, it needs to be able to do that process. Otherwise, we've just killed your business. And that's not something I relish.
Yeah.
I'm here to help you grow your business and make it better, not kill it. Right, so that initial discussion phase is when I'm really searching out, is there something in your business processes that I need to be careful about and protect? Because if there is a process and I can't do it, then I need to say, look, I'm not the one, because I can't do this. Right? The earlier we can identify that, the better everybody is, because I can say, hey, I'm not the right tool. Let's say, who else out there might be able to do a better job, and we can turn the discussion that way, right? Everything else, that if it doesn't create value for your customer, you should be willing to change it, right? And so that comes back to that teaching people that we are going to change how we do things, and we will regularly change it.
Yeah, I entirely agree with that. Do you know, are you familiar with the Pareto Principle?
Yes.
Yeah, that's something I leverage quite a bit. Now, do you make sure your clients understand what that is and implement that when working with them?
So that starts to get more into management consulting. And I haven't tended to get that involved in my customers. My involvement is really, so far, has been around how do we leverage this tool set?
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, I'm really keen to partner with companies and do some of the management side of it as well, because it doesn't relate to the tool set, right? Because part of it is how you think about it. But I haven't done that so far.
Yeah, gotcha. The Pareto Principle being 20% of your services equate to 80% of your revenue, or 20% of something equals 80% usually. So 20% of the trees in the forest, they get 80% of the sunlight. 20% of the lions in the herd get 80% of the food. 20% of your employees are doing 80% of the work. And as soon as you as a business owner start to understand that, and I'm shocked at how constant that is everywhere. You're able to empower that 20%. And start to take the focus away from the other 80%. So I was just curious if that's played a part at all.
Right, and so where ERP comes into this is if you are, like in your business, if you're finding that 80% of your cost is going to 20% of your customers, you can then look at, well, the why.
Yeah.
Is it the customer? Is it what we've agreed to? Or is it something about the customer system? And then you can look at it and say, okay, well, now that I have information available to work with, what do I need to change so that the business can run more cleanly?
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover?
Yeah, there was a couple things.
Yeah, because I think we've gone pretty comprehensive here. One other quick question I do have for you is just any resources, market leaders, anything like that that people can look into? I know you've mentioned a couple of books so far, but I'm just curious if there's anything you would recommend people start when they're starting to look into ERP stuff.
I guess one of the things that I would suggest is surround yourself with some colleagues that you can leverage their experience, their knowledge, and their connections. So an organization that I participate in is called the Vancouver Executives Association. And they're a group of business owners and executives that meet regularly. And so they're almost like a board of directors, a sounding board, a resource where you can ask questions. And they've all done a lot of stuff in their life. And they can provide you information and ideas. Right. So I would encourage people to become involved in organizations like that. Right. Because like a lot of resources that I could give are vendor specific. And of course, the messaging is around selling a product. Right. Obviously, the product has to help your customer, but it tends to be vendor focused, and I'm not sure that's the best resource for me to just hand out.
Gotcha.
Then one other thing that I would like to convey to people is if you're thinking of making a major change to your business, like implementing an ERP, is to really, really think about what decisions you've been avoiding. Because implementing this type of a system is not going to help you continue to avoid the question.
Yeah.
Right? Or what decision are you avoiding? Right? Is it letting somebody go because they're not a cultural fit, or their skill set is no longer good for the business? That type of thing.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one thing I really encourage people to think about.
I think that makes a lot of sense. That kind of ties into what I asked about earlier regarding the fear. Because again, like when you realize, oh, I've been suppressing this, or I haven't been answering this question for 3 years, like why have I been doing this like this? And it's just like you said, people are averse to change. It can cause a lot of anxiety for a lot of business owners, and it can be very overwhelming, and some people will start and stop and it's quite challenging as a vendor trying to help somebody when they're just lurching backwards and forwards, so I'm glad you brought that up. Do you notice any other sorry, go ahead.
So for me, I'm not in a hurry to sell something. Right? I want to make sure that you are ready, willing, and able to embrace this.
Yeah, 100%.
When you make the decision, right? So I'm not keen to do it before you're really ready.
Yeah, I entirely agree. Like it's one of the reasons we don't do contracts with our clients is I don't want to work with anyone that doesn't want to work with us. I want to make sure that they're ready to go and they're ready to start doing whatever goals they have, because it's so important, I think, especially with what you're doing. People need to believe in the product. They need to understand why the changes are being made, and it's just so crucial that people are able to leverage these technologies properly, so that their business can start to thrive. And if they have a skeleton in the closet and they refuse to allow you to work on one area, the entire machine can fall apart. And a lot of people don't, like you said, it takes about a year for people to really go, whoa, like I understood that there were problems, but I didn't understand there were this many opportunities. Like it's so crazy when people do start to implement different solutions like yours. And again, it's just you look back. I tell my staff the same thing. You're going to look back in 3 months and you're going to be amazed at how far you've progressed. And we're going to do that every day. And after a year, you're going to be an entirely new person. And it's I think that software like yours does that on a macroeconomic scale for entire organizations and associations, not just for individuals, but it does it for both.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Oh, it just makes it the way I like to phrase it, it turns your business into a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
Right. It just runs.
Yeah, literally it does. Yeah.
Right. There's no more, driving around with the emergency brake on. right? Like, oh man, I'm using a lot of gas here and not going anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And again, it comes down to that situation where you've got everyone in your organization has things to do. Everyone is an expert in their own way. And the more you can sit down with them and understand where they're coming from and give them the freedom to do what they need to do, and then create a standardized system based off of their reports, it just works so well. Like, as I've removed myself from different aspects of the business and replaced that with people who have 11 years experience or 20 years experience or 5 years experience doing whatever it is that they're doing, they're going, hey, the way you were doing it was fundamentally broken, and I've gone ahead and reworked everything, so we don't need to talk about this anymore. This is the way I'm going to do it. And I'm so happy when people do that. I see a lot of other business owners go, no, it's going to be my way, blah, blah. And it's just like, why would you want to restrict this person who's trying to bring more to the table and trying to say, like, this is broken. This is a useless waste of everyone's time. Everyone will prosper if we implement this thing.
Yes.
And I love tools like yours because it gives the business owner it gives the stubborn, resistant to change business owner the hard facts of this is what your system is doing. You need to change this part of your system, and you need to keep doing what this part of your system is doing. And like you said, when staff are able to see those changes, they might be resistant at first, and then they see the benefit, and they go, we should have always been doing this. This is the way it should have been. And it kind of reminds me, like you said, well-oiled machine. It kind of reminds me of like Southeast Asia traffic, where you see the vans going through and the bicycles are going through and the motorcycles are going through and the guys jogging and everyone's just going as fast as they can go, but no one ever gets into a collision. It's just so smooth, and it's this organized chaos where your business just has all of these people doing their individual roles, but somehow it comes together, and it just creates this kind of mesmerizing operation where it just creates so much more value for everybody. So
yes, absolutely.
Right.
So one of the other things that I wanted to emphasize about this software is look, when you start out, like in your case, you mentioned that you hate the accounting, so you basically outsourced it, and that's a great strategy. But where I find a lot of smaller business owners get themselves into trouble is that they also throw off the visibility into it. Right? So they never look at a financial statement, or if they do, it's once a month. Right? The main thing they look at is cash in the bank.
Do you have a camera in my office? I just do it on the 15th of the month. 15th of the month, every time I look at everything, and I'm like, okay, this is good enough. I just recently made a change where I'm going to look at it once a week. Last week, but literally once a month, and then I'm like, okay, this is enough. I know that this is happening.
Right, and so what I encourage is to have financial statements, and if you don't know how to read them, hire an accountant who'll teach you.
Yeah.
Right, or pay somebody to act as a CFO for 2 or 3 hours a month, and sit down with you and tell you what your financial statements are telling you. Over time, you'll learn, right? But it's that visibility, teaching yourself to have visibility into your business, because if you don't watch it, it's kind of like driving your car without looking out the windshield. Sometime you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
and
100%.
So having those regular reports, like, so one of the things I'm focused on right now is building dashboards for owners and executives. Right? So you can have current, timely access to the metrics that determine the success or failure of your business.
It's so important.
Yeah. Right. And it's we build them for your business, but the idea is that you can have a daily look at it, and everything looks good. I can just go about my day, or wait a minute, what's this? I need to ask some questions. Right, but that allows you to be proactive.
Yeah.
So like in your business, am I getting an excess number of trouble tickets from a particular customer, or Or am I seeing a set of tickets that are outstanding too long? And then you can just ask questions.
Yeah.
Right. And what I've seen is that visibility, and then you asking questions, teaches the rest of your staff that you're paying attention.
Yeah, exactly. You need to have I can't remember the word, but yeah, another interviewee said the exact same thing. You need to give the illusion of oversight, something like that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Right. You need to give the perception that you're actually watching.
Mm-hmm.
And all it takes is that occasional question of, why has this ticket been outstanding for 4 days?
Yeah.
Oh, we're waiting for a part, or we're waiting for a patch. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, everybody else in the meeting has heard the question.
Yeah.
They have the message that you are paying attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So that's something that I think every business can implement and leverage. And I do think they should, because it not only will it help them now, but it's a foundational thing that allows them to continue to do it going forward. The back-end tools might change, the data sources might change, but you still have your dashboard and you still have your metrics.
Yeah, 100%. Awesome. Yeah, is there anything that you want to touch on other than these topics, or you think you're all set?
Oh, I'm good, but the one last thing I'd say is if anybody listening to this has been thinking about making some changes to their software for your business, call me. It's a free meeting.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. What else can we promote for you? So obviously Flexxus and LinkedIn, phone number. What's the best thing to reach you? And then what would you like to promote?
Well, I'd like to promote, obviously, helping customers with better software and leveraging, and even if you don't need new software, we can talk about how we can leverage what you have. And then, of course, there's building dashboards for your metrics. If anybody is interested in that, it'd be great to have a conversation.
That's awesome. And I'll make sure to throw everything down in the links in the description so people know how to reach you. Okay. I'll get all that info from you after the show, and then we'll throw all that in. And then people will have a quick, easy way to get a hold of you and ask you some questions. And something that I really do appreciate, Paul, and I think that you and I kind of share this, is we're both happy to just give out free advice. We're both nerds about what we do. We both love to talk about what we love to do. And if anyone ever asks me anything, I'm just happy to give out free advice. I'm not overly concerned about making a sale. And I'm just super happy to just make sure that people are on the right track and I'm helping them out. So you and I have had a couple of discussions before the show, and I've been very, very appreciative of some of the things that we've talked about and the insight you've provided. So thank you again very, very much for coming on today and sharing a lot of this information with folks and some of these strategies and different features and things that are available nowadays, because I just really wanted to make sure that there's a little bit more exposure for solutions and for people like yourself, because I think every single business should be using some of these strategies and your software at the end of the day, especially if they want to be expanding their impact in their communities.
Yes. Thanks for having me, Jake. It's great talking to you.
Yeah, it was great to have you. So again, everybody, please make sure to check out the links in the description. We're going to have all of Paul's info there. And again, thank you so much, Paul. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
And I think that does it for today's video. If you could please leave a like on this video, it really helps us out. If you want to see more videos like this, then please hit subscribe. If you have a suggestion for a future video or a guest you'd like to see on the show, please leave a comment down below or email us at techtips@umbrellaitservices.ca. Have a great day and see you all soon.